Tmpa was really growing exponentially in South Texas and the Rio Grande Valley. We were the minority association, right? And my experience as a member was nothing but excellent. I mean, there was times where I thought like my career's done. Use of force situation, right? That can get distorted and seen a certain way. Tmpa was fantastic.
Welcome back, viewers, watchers, listeners. I'm your host, Tyler Owen. Clint McNear, or my co-host, he's busy with some Texas FOP stuff going on, and he is across the state right now fulfilling his duties as the FOP El Presidente. But today, the one and only field representative from South Texas, JP Rodriguez, is in the house. He was in town for another event, and I demanded that you come on and introduce yourself and talk about what the hell is going on in the Rio Grande Valley. So, JP Rodriguez, welcome to Blue Grit, man.
Thank you for having me. And, you send that team to kidnap me from the hotel and bring me on the podcast, so I appreciate that. But it really is. It's an honor to finally be a part of the podcast, and I really appreciate the work that you and Clint are doing, and just there's a variety of topics, right, that you guys discuss, and sometimes a couple of crazy stories here and there, but I really think it helps to define who we are as an organization, and then who the staff is, right? Because you know better than anyone that we all have different personalities, right?
Man, that is one thing. For those that know my story, know that I was a cop in East Texas, lived in East Texas for quite some time, and then transitioned down to Central Texas. I do not live in Austin, so please don't hold that against me. But man, seeing now that I'm in this role within Tmpa, seeing the different cultures of Texas and seeing the different facets of all the hats that field reps truly do wear, man, it's an honor to get to know you as a person, as a field rep, and man, you got a lot of stuff going on there in the valley. But we first kind of kick off the podcast of who the hell is JP? Where'd you grow up? How'd you get into law enforcement? You've got a pretty unique story that I think will resonate with a lot of our listeners. So let's start there.
So, so my story starts back as a teenager, right, who got married probably a little young, right? Me and my wife became parents at a really young age, and we were both music majors in college, right? She was a music major. I wanted to major in I was majoring in music marketing, right? So my dream was like, hey, I want to own my own studio, right? I want to.
What type of instrument?
I played brass instruments, right?
Okay.
So I was up at UTSA for a little while before I went back to UT Pan American, which is now UTRGV. And out of necessity to support my family at a very young age, right? Because I was a dad at 19 years old. So I thought, oh my God, right? What am I going to do, right? I've got to, you have to grow up really quick when you're a young dad, right?
Yep.
And I got a job as a security guard, and I don't remember what year it was. It might have been in 96 or 97. It was 97. And then we had a contract for the Walmarts, right? So we were like the exterior security guards, right? Keeping an eye on the parking lot, right? Our job was to report any suspicious activity, right? And I was probably about 135 pounds, right? Soaking wet. And so I was still a music major at the time, but one day, I'll never forget this day, I had to cover for one of the guards that didn't show. He was called in sick or something at the Westlaco Walmart. And I'm standing out there. It was cold weather, and I'm just thinking about life. And a Westlaco Police Department patrol officer named Ted Walensky drove by, and he made an effort to stop and just kind of BS with me. And we just started talking, and he said, hey, man, he's like, would you be interested in applying for a entry-level police officer? I was like, no. I was like, no. I just wasn't interested in the time, right? And so then the conversation, I started talking about, being a young dad and supporting my family. And he said, well, why don't you do this, man? We've got openings in dispatch. He's like, you don't have to be a cop, but why don't you apply for dispatch? He's like,
probably more money.
Well, it was more money than I was making as a guard, and what really caught my eye was that I remember the conversation, and he brought up the job has benefits, right?
Yep.
you have insurance, you have vacation leave, sick leave, and that's what caught my attention. And he said it's a full-time job, but they had just cut our hours, so we were working full-time hours. And I remember, I mean, this was a time where we were struggling as young parents, right? I mean, we were struggling, and I said, you know what? I don't have anything to lose, man. Let me go. I think the following day I went in and applied for dispatch. And within a matter of, you got to take a test. Within a matter of like 2 or 3 days, I got a job offer as a dispatcher. So I thought, okay, right, I'll show up to work, do my best. And I kept going to school. And one of the unique things that I really appreciated was we had the option of riding around with the officers on our lunch break. So I made it a point to, I really wanted to know who the men and women were that were wearing that uniform, that we were dispatching to all types of crazy calls, man. That was my first experience with just the
brutality.
Burden. Well, the burden that a cop has to carry on their shoulders. The men and women out there serving our community, right? And I would hear it on the radio, but I wanted to see it. Yeah. So I would ride around with the officers on my lunch hour, and it just totally changed my perspective of police officers. And I had a lot of great mentors. And the following year, 1998, some of those mentors, they said, hey, man, you want to make a better life for your family, you can pursue a career in law enforcement, and it's a rewarding career. So I took the entry-level test, right? Didn't have my peace officer license. And at the time, what they would do, if you scored top 3 and you weren't certified, they would sponsor you. And some agencies still do, but it's usually contractual, right? So I took the written test, scored top 3. I took the physical agility test, scored top 3. So I think I came out 3rd out of like 40-some applicants. So they sponsored me to go to the academy, and I remember very clearly the conversations were from the command staff where you're going to transition from a dispatcher to a police cadet, and your job right now is to pass the academy. If you don't pass the academy, you're out of a job. So there was a sense of urgency there, right? But it was super exciting. I just really thought, I really grew to admire the men and women that I got to work with as a dispatcher. And I thought, here's my opportunity, right? Not just to make a better life for my family, but to serve my community, right? To really make a difference. Yeah. And I'll tell you, one of the things I saw, and I still remember riding around as a dispatcher, seeing things like a police officer showing up to a call for service. That's non-law enforcement. That's non-enforcement, right? A little old lady with plumbing issues, and the officer would make time to help that little old lady fix her a leak under the sink or something. And just, it really changed my perspective of what I saw, maybe either through Hollywood, right, or through the lens of Hollywood, or through the lens of mainstream media, to, oh man, this is a really honorable profession, right?
Yep.
And some of those mentors that I had back then in 1997, 98 are still really close friends today.
Yeah.
In 2025. So and the rest is history, right? I went to the police academy, graduated, and transitioned from police cadet to entry-level police officer. And I was at my first agency about, I don't remember how long it was. Maybe it was about 10 years. And then I left my first agency and went to work on a drug task force. I went to work with the HIDTA task force under the umbrella of the Hidalgo County District Attorney's Office. And let me tell you, man, I mean, that was just, I was oblivious, and I mean oblivious to the amount of drugs coming in through the U.S.-Mexico border, right?
Yep.
And it was great. It was an awesome job, so but it also was very demanding, and it was also difficult to maintain.
It's hard to be a family man, doing that kind of job.
You know this. You were a TFO, right?
Yep.
And it's very similar, right? It's
well, because you get those phone calls at 2:00 in the morning, and you got to answer those because potentially the CI or informant could be in a situation where it's life or death, especially there on the border,
Absolutely.
and you had a couple of those. You had a couple of people that reached out, and there was life or death situations that you helped. And you look back on it now, and you're thankful you did. But it does take away from your family time.
Yeah, that's exactly right. You're absolutely right. The CI would call hey, I need some help. Like, what's going on? Well, and I went to meet with a drug trafficking organization, and like they want me to go now. They want me to go pick up a load. Like, dude, what are you doing on your own? First, and then you have to call your coworkers, right, on the task force, and you have to set up a surveillance op, and you're thinking, is this a legitimate
Call,
call,
or are they setting this up?
or are they setting the CIA up for something else, right? And it was a great job. I just remembering though thinking I lost track of the days off because we really were working 7 days a week sometimes. And you got to meet some of the guys from so a great group of guys, man. Some of them are still there. Some of them have retired and moved on. So I did that for about 2 years. And then I actually went back to Weslaco for about a year and a half. And then I got recruited to Hidalgo County Sheriff's Office, which was my last agency. And, you know, I'm still real grateful. I'm grateful for the opportunity, right? But when I first initially got recruited to the sheriff's office, it was like, it was not a good time at the sheriff's office.
Because it was on the heels of a former, there was some corruption.
That's right.
With the past political figure. Sheriff's offices, me being a past employee of one, and left on good terms. But when you work for sheriff's office, it can be demanding, but it can also be very much political. And so you enter an environment that you were used to, municipality, where your boss wasn't necessarily elected. He was appointed by the city council. There's a lot of weight that carries on with sheriff's deputies and sheriff's office employees. Talk about your interaction and that transition period from a city municipal police department to a sheriff's office, and what a reality check it was.
It was a huge reality check. I mean, aside from what was going on, right? And I just was telling someone on the plane up here that when I made the transition from back to the sheriff's office, I remember one of the days that ICE agents were removing boxes of evidence from the building, and that's not a good feeling when a federal agency is removing boxes from the
agency you work at.
Yeah, from the agency you work at, right? It's just kind of like a gut punch, and you know, and I remember we'd go have lunch at some of the local restaurants, and we would get a lot of hatred towards us because of what was going on, and I was, you know, but as far as transitioning from a local municipality to, and in this case was the eighth largest county in the state. Out of the 254 counties, you're talking about the 8th largest county, close to 300 deputies on the law enforcement side, 400 in the jail, 100 administrative staff, like just a huge agency, just a different perspective, right? And the way I described it with a lot of my friends was, it was like being a city cop on steroids. Yeah. Like you have huge area of responsibility, right? Whatever sector you're assigned to, and then you just have a higher frequency of some of the calls, like aggravated robberies, right? Some of the homicides, right? Some of the all the other things that are happening in the rural areas. So it took some adjusting, and I was fortunate enough that, you know, going back to opportunity, right? And that's been such a blessing for my family. When the new sheriff was appointed by the by the county commissioners court, they appointed Sheriff Eddie Guerra. I remember one day they said, "Hey, you know, report to sheriff's conference room." And I thought, man, why does this guy want to talk to me, right? Out of 300 deputies, why does he want to talk to me? And I remember that day, and I was super nervous, and I didn't know why he wanted to talk to me. And he sat me down, and one of the first things I remember saying was like, "You have prior PIO experience, right?" I said, "Yes, sir, that's correct. I was a PIO for a short stint at my first agency, no training," right?
Yeah.
It's kind of like, and I'll tell you how that happened. I was crossing the chief of police in the hallway. I was wearing my Class A's, and he said, "Hey," he's like, "You know what? From this day forward, you're the PIO of this agency, and by the way, the news media is in the lobby waiting for you. So we'll give him an interview." Now, and I mean, I kid you not. And I know him. I thought he was joking. I said, and I laughed. I said, "You're joking, right?" He said, "I'm dead serious. As of this day forward, you're the PIO, and the media is waiting for you in the lobby." He didn't tell me what the interview, but mind you, I'm going into this blind. So I actually peeked around the corner and I saw the cameraman and the reporter waiting with their microphone. And I just about, that was
a scary moment. Yeah.
I was going to use another colorful language, choice of words, but
you got thrown into the fire.
True story, man. I went into the restroom, one of the single restrooms, and stared at myself in the mirror and said, "What in the world am I gonna? Why? What am I? Why would he do that to me?" Right?
Yeah.
And after panicking for about 5 minutes, and this is where I think a lot of what we do as cops, or really in life, is just situational awareness, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we have to find a way to get things done, no matter how complicated, no matter how difficult. And I feel like being a cop blessed me to think on my feet, right? So I looked at myself in the mirror and I said, how can I deal with this situation? And I said, well, I know that I can't see anything without my glasses. So I took my glasses off and of course I see real blurry without my glasses. And I walked out and met the reporter and I met the cameraman with one of those giant, cameras.
Old school.
Yeah, one of the old school ones. And I said, what do you want the interview? It was something about, there was a bunch of cars that had been burglarized and, people had called and complained. So we went outside, did the interview. Not being able to see the reporter or the cameraman actually helped me. And I share that story when I talk to groups, whether they're students or other officers, and I tell them, you have to improvise, you have to think on your feet.
Yep.
And you have to deal with the situation because it's not going to go away.
Well, that day the sheriff asked you about that, you obviously thought on your feet.
Yeah. Well, that was the chief of police.
Right. But I'm saying, like, moving forward.
Yeah, moving forward.
Many years later, the sheriff brings you down and says, hey, you had PIO experience at your other agency.
That's right.
And then what was your response to that?
Well, I knew where this was going. And so being the PIO can be really stressful. And the way I describe it is I tell the story that when he asked me that and I said yes, and then his next response was, I need your help and I need you to be my PIO. And my mind was saying no. My mind was saying no way, right? Like, you've been through this before. It's not fun. You know how toxic it can be sometimes being a PIO. But my heart said, this man's genuinely and sincerely asking for help. So I've got to help this man, right? And I'll never forget, he said, I need your help to regain the trust of the people. And I need your help to turn this agency around, because that's what I want to do. And I want to make this agency the premier agency of the county in South Texas. And I felt that his words were genuine and sincere. And even though my mind was telling me, like, no, right? My heart said, yeah, I got to help this guy. And he told me, he was very blunt and very clear. He said,
R. Kelly started a song that way. My mind's telling me no.
Yeah. Well, I was going to sing it, but yeah.
Yeah.
So he tells me very clearly, there's no additional pay.
Yeah.
There's no promotion. You're doing this on a voluntary basis. And I thought, wow, that just makes it kind of.
That makes it sound sweeter.
Well, that makes maybe not sweeter, but yeah, And I said, you know what? Yeah, I'll help out. I said, you tell me what you need, and I will be the PIO. Well, again, oblivious to the scale of work on the local level and PIO for the 8th largest county for the state. Yeah, it was just like on steroids, man.
Yeah.
I mean, we had to restructure the way we were disseminating information, and I also was a Crime Stoppers coordinator. We actually had to write policy for Crime Stoppers coordinators. So we had to change a lot of stuff, right? And we had to change a lot of stuff. And one of the things I really admired was that we would have these conversations, and they were along the lines of, we're not going to hide anything from the media. Like, we're going to be the first, right? If there's a malfeasance issue, if there's if there's something that happened, and we're going to share the good, but we're also going to share the negative stuff. And we're going to be the first to do it. And we're going to control the messaging and the narrative. We're not going to let somebody distort that, right? So transparency was key, right? And I really appreciated that. And I still think to this day that I don't believe in coincidence, right? I think God, I really do. I think God gave me that opportunity because it opened up other doors for me. politically. Fast forward to about 2016, I was involved in some of the local races and helping good people get elected. And I had somebody approach me and say, well, when are you going to run for office? And I was like, what are you talking about? Like, that's crazy talk. It's crazy talk. Like, I'm not qualified, right? I'm not knowledgeable enough to hold elected office. I just don't feel like I'm ready for that role. And then I had another person approach me, and then another person approached me, and this encouraging me in a positive way to, hey, you should think about running for office one day. And that's what I did in 2017. I ran for city council there in the city where I live. Didn't plan on winning. That's for sure. Didn't plan on winning. I thought I'll get my name out there. Second go around, I'll try to take it right, and we'll see where the once the dust settles, right, we'll see where we're at. When I would knock on doors, and I was block walking, right, and I was knocking on doors, people initially seemed startled because, like, you're that deputy that comes out and reports crime on the news. And I was like, yeah, I'm not here. Like, they're like, are y'all gonna raid my house? I'm like, that's not what I'm here for. Like, I'm wearing shorts and tennis shoes. Like, here's my push card. I'm running for office, right? So I think that being the PIO for the sheriff's office really helped me with my.
And what year was this when that happened?
That was 2017.
And whenever you became the PIO for Hidalgo County?
No. That was probably a few years before. It might have been 15, I think.
Okay.
I think it was 2015.
And at some point, you were you ever the POA president for Weslaco?
I was.
Okay.
I was. I was board member. I held some of the different
right
positions on the executive board,
and that probably spring forwarded you to be a part of Hidalgo County because they work close together. The POA, Weslaco POA, they see each other at least at different events.
That's true. I think back then, Tmpa was really growing exponentially in South Texas and the Rio Grande Valley. There was some agencies where even we were the minority association, right? And I'll tell you that my experience as a member with Tmpa throughout my career was nothing but excellence.
Yeah.
I mean, there was times where seriously, I thought like my career's done, right? I thought like, I'm, use of force situation, right? That can get distorted and seen a certain way. Tmpa was fantastic. The attorney at the time was Frank Zabarte out of Brownsville. So I don't know if you remember those old cell phones that had like they were like the old
jitterbugs or flip phones.
It wasn't even a flip phone.
Like the old Nokia.
Yeah, like that old Nokia where you just hold a button down.
That's where you can send out a two word sentence, and it would take you 15 minutes to hit the 5 times.
Oh yeah,
the 8.
They were terrible, man. They were terrible, and they had like 2 ringtones.
Yeah.
But you could program a number into a phone number into a number.
Right.
So you would hold it down, and it would dial that number. Remember that?
Yep.
So I had Frank Zabarte's phone number programmed in my cell phone. I had one of the first Sprint cell phones, and we were just paying a ridiculous amount of money, right? And every time I called, he would answer. And whenever I needed the field rep, they would answer. And because as a POA board member, sometimes you need a lot of guidance if you're not familiar with the nuances, right, of association leadership. But Tmpa was always there for me as a member. And I tell a lot of members that when I'm talking to them, I say, hey, look, I'm not just a field rep. I need to clarify something. I need you to understand something. I'm not just an employee. I was a longtime member. I've been in your shoes.
Yes.
I've been in situations where you're involved in a critical incident, or you're there while a critical incident happens. You're genuinely worried about your career and your job. I had a lady crash into me one time. I was responding code lights and siren to a vehicle pursuit, which then ended up on a foot pursuit. Tmpa represented me when the lady crashed into me because she sued me. So I have called on Tmpa more times than I can remember, but they were always there for me.
So with that being said, you go from Weslaco to Hidalgo County. Soon thereafter, you became involved with their local association. At some point during all this, there was an opportunity for you to be a part-time field rep like I was in East Texas. So in 2013, you were given the opportunity to come on to Tmpa part-time. And, I think that you seeing the magnitude, the size of Tmpa, when you start seeing the critical incidences that come across your emails, it's eye-opening. Talk about your transition and talk about how you got exposed to that as a part-time field rep and what that included.
So, we had some on-the-job training, right? What we weren't, I think what I wasn't ready for, or what I didn't realize, was just the nature of the calls that would come in. And so, if one of our members was involved in a critical incident, well, we're like that first line support, right? And many times we'd be running interference while the attorney's making his way to the scene. So a lot of times, at least in my region or my area, I was first on scene while the attorney was on his way. And so just seeing the flip side of it, right, and just the responsibility, but it was always a good feeling afterwards when you could help a member out. And I feel like I told some of the guys, if I can emulate some of the service that I got as a member, then it's a good day.
Yeah.
Then I feel good about myself. What I didn't realize was just being a member and then transitioning to a field rep was just a sheer number of phone calls that come in for everything from administrative issues, right? Complaints filed against our members, lawsuits, sometimes criminal allegations.
Yeah.
And then the critical incidents was just like, oh my God, like I didn't know that the field reps were dealing with all this stuff behind the scenes. And that was eye-opening. That was, it wasn't shocking, but I understood real quick how much responsibility we have to carry for our membership. And I think back then, the statewide, where there was less members, and we've grown just tremendously. So I really feel honored to be a part of something, that legacy, right? I call it the legacy.
Well, and I think it's cool too, because like me and some of the other field reps, if you look at your career, you've gone from dispatch to patrol. Well, let's go back further. You were a security officer, so there's the humbleness of being a security guard and seeing the uniformed officers, go past and handle the law enforcement side. Then you became a dispatcher. Then you became a Weslaco police officer. Moved up the chain there, becoming a PIO. Then you went over to the sheriff's office, or between then you became you're on the task force with the Hidalgo County DA's office. And so you've got all these different hats that you wore. But in my opinion, that gives you a better understanding of truly what our members go through on a daily basis. And it gives you a different perspective on so many facets of the different aspects of law enforcement. And so I think that makes you more experienced and more able to have that understanding and relatability to really our membership base there in the Rio Grande Valley.
100% it helps to understand when a member calls in what they're dealing with. I also did 5 years in CID, so I understand, like some of the calls we get might be a detective dealing with a poor job performance allegation, right? Because they didn't submit cases on time to the DA's office. So I understand all that because I did that for several years. It doesn't make me better. It just makes me have a clearer understanding of what they're dealing with.
Yeah.
And I really think that the team of field reps that we have, yourself included.
Yeah.
I think we're such a diverse background.
Yep.
That is our strength.
Yeah.
I never did internal affairs. I was never a canine, but we have guys that have done stuff like that.
Yep. It's like the A-team. Like when we all unify, it's
we just need the van.
What the hell was that cartoon when we were kids? It was like they were all like they had their own identity. They had water, spirit.
Oh man!
I jokingly said that the other day. The Layton area, the Southeast Texas field rep. We were joking around and we were joking about whose icon would I would I be the water or spirit? And it's a cartoon that was out when you and I were kids. But
Wasn't it like
anyway,
Planet something?
yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. But back to your point, you're right. I think that Clem McNear says it best. That this organization, whether it be field reps, whether it be membership, whether it be executive level, there's a certain recipe here that's a recipe for success, and it's often imitated, but never duplicated. And I think that's the reason why we truly feel like a big family. I mean, my own kids look at you guys as uncles, and that's the cool part about being a part of this organization. And it's cool getting to know you just as a person, but also as a colleague.
Yeah.
And then you add the fact that you were a city council, and then that adds another perspective to truly kind of what the city council person is thinking, and a unique dynamic.
So that really helps me for things like contract negotiations. And I always I share stories with our associations, especially when we're about to start the process of contract negotiations or meeting confer negotiations or just collaborative negotiations. Right?
And just to be clear, because you are a city council person at Weslaco, JP has stepped aside during those contract negotiations with the Weslaco Police Department. You're not even involved. You're involved, but you're on the city council side of it, and we don't share that information with you just for the protection of our members.
Sure. Yeah. So I make it a point to not participate because of a potential conflict, right? But with the other associations, I don't want them to just participate in the process. I want them to learn, because they may be the next generation of field reps for Tmpa.
Yeah.
I may retire one day, 5 years from now, and I want to know that somebody out there is ready to accept the role and responsibility of being the next field rep when we're 60,000 members, right, around the state. So I really try to teach them some of the tricks of the trade, right? Like with one of the things with the negotiations, I always tell them, look, guys, there's two things we need to focus on is, does the elected body have the ability to pay? Do they actually have the money to give you guys what you feel like you're worth and what you deserve to be paid? And then number two, do they have a desire to pay what you're worth? And you have to start with those two elements during negotiations, right? And many times that'll kind of guide you on what strategies you need to form after that. One of the other things I try to really pound this into their strategies, right? Yeah, and so we've got a lot of great guys and gals out there, right? But sometimes, like a parent, we've got to kind of guide them a little bit. And I tell them, look, guys, at the end of the day, you're dealing with personalities.
Mm-hmm.
And whatever the elected body number is, right, whether it's 5 or 6 or 4, you're dealing with that many different personalities. So you've got to know your audience, right? You've got to know who you're dealing with. And you've also got to identify where they stand financially. And also, you've got to be able to work and build up your political capital, right?
Yep.
You've got to engage the community, and you've got to get them on your side. You need the community to know who your association is. And that's probably one of the most important components for successful negotiations. So I've learned a lot, and it wasn't necessarily because I'm the sharpest tool in the shed. It's just because really I've learned a lot through my mistakes.
Yeah.
And I think that's the best teacher I've had, right? And I've also learned from other more experienced field reps, right? And everything I learn, I'm going to pass it on to the next generation of field reps. But it's just, there's so many things we do, right, that our members
don't see.
Yeah. And not that that's bad, but it's just, we're out there sometimes, and I tell our guys, hey, I say, look, if I don't answer the phone, if it's an emergency, 100% call the 800 number, right? Because somebody's always on call. That's one of the awesome things about our organization is you're getting a cop or a retired cop that's going to deal with your situation. And if it's not emergency, I said, call me, text me. I said, if I don't respond immediately, I will respond to you. But just be patient with me, because I say some weeks we're going 100 miles an hour.
Yeah.
I said, and we really are. I mean, we've got boots on the ground all around the state. We're helping members that are going through different things. We're helping their families sometimes.
Yeah, we got ledge going on right now. The session at the Capitol. We got the Round Rock Rodeo going on with the Round Rock Police Department. There's different aspects that we do across the state, and which is another truly honor of different things that we're involved with. But
Yeah,
that's one of the things we got to deal with.
yeah, and I one of the things I appreciate is that the members in my region know that I'm going to get back to them like as soon as possible.
Yeah.
And I always ask, or I'll say, I'm in a meeting, right? Is everything okay? Do I need to step out? Because I'll step out. Yeah. And they'll say, oh, it's not an emergency. Just call me whenever you get. Right. If it's an emergency, yeah, I'm walking out of that meeting. I don't care where I'm at. The other day, I left the meeting early to go see my daughter perform. And it was the night those 3 San Juan officers got stabbed. 2 seconds after I got that text, I didn't ask where. I told my wife, I've got to leave. I'm sorry. It's work related. I got to check on my guys. Yeah. And I ran out of that auditorium. And luckily I was in the Tmpa truck. So I went straight from that auditorium straight to, and I staged nearby the scene where they were still actively searching for the suspect, because I thought this has potential to turn into an OIS, right? Mm-hmm. And, get the attorney on standby. Once the all clear's given and the suspect's in custody, I make my way to the hospital, check on our guys, talk to the mayor, city manager, talk to some of the medical staff there, just checking on our guys, making sure they're okay, right?
That's what I do want to touch on real quick. One of the great things that I've always loved about you is that there's so much compassion in what you do. And with compassion also comes a little bit of heartache. What I mean by that is that in the Valley, for those that don't know, the Valley has a lot of members, but it's so concentrated in one area that you truly do have a great relationship with the majority of your locals in your area. With that said, there's been many times that we have lost officers in the region that you not only knew, but you had close relationships with. Talk about the meaning of not knowing who it is, breaking it through that door, showing up to the scene, and at that point having to be the professional on Tmpa side and walking through that challenge of being a field rep during situations just as that.
It's hard, man. It is. Some of the things we deal with as field reps, they break your heart, especially when it's somebody when it's somebody you consider a friend and not just a member, right? I told the story and I hope it doesn't, I'm very transparent, right? I wear my heart on my sleeve, and it's really hard sometimes to see people, and I admire all the men and women that are out there because they're still supporting the mission of public safety, right? Yeah. I feel like I made it to the end of my career, right? But there's a lot of men and women out there still, fighting the good fight, continuing that mission of public safety. They're making the sacrifices now so that me and my family and my community can be safe. And I really admire and appreciate that. So when somebody gets hurt, it's so hard. We have to put on the field rep hat, and we have to go take a support role, and you have to just kind of shut off the emotions, and it's hard sometimes. Yeah. I that's something I struggle with. Mm-hmm. And because of what I've seen, throughout my career and as a field rep, I tell the story of when I got the notification that Lieutenant Milton Resendez had been killed in the line of duty, I almost just kind of froze at my house for about a minute or two, because this is somebody I know.
Yeah.
This is somebody I know. I mean, he was on our local board.
Those that don't know, he was the president?
He was, I think at one point he was vice president. I don't know that he ever made it up to.
But had a very close working relationship with Tmpa employees, including you and John Sariga and Mike Gomez. Y'all had a very much personal relationship with Lieutenant Resendez.
So as I get dressed and make my way out there, and start calling some of the boots on the ground, right? Some of our other board members, and and they're struggling. They're struggling just to talk because of what's happening. And I remember I showed up at the hospital in the Tmpa truck, and I drove around the parking lot. I drove around the hospital twice. I could not muster the courage to get off and see my friend or someone I knew, right? In
that state.
In that state. I just couldn't. So then I made my way to the scene. The scene was under control. I made my check on the guys there. Made my way then to the PD, where it was just a really sad state of emotions right there.
Yeah.
And I've seen other, another situation where one of our members got critically injured in the city of Mission. The POA president and I were the first to arrive at the emergency room, and we stood outside that trauma room where they worked on him for about 45 minutes, and that was just one of the most tragic things to see, right?
Yeah.
And, seeing more and more, brothers and sisters show up, right? As, from this family, and seeing the hurt that they're going to have to carry now, right, for the rest of their lives. But I think the one thing that I can draw out of those really difficult situations is that it makes me proud to be a field rep. Because as hard as it is for me to process that, I can take a support role to their needs, right? Whether it's buying food for the family members, right, for a wake, or whether it's just honoring them in the procession, right, with the Tmpa truck, or just, one of the hardest things is delivering that line of duty death benefit.
Yeah.
That's really hard for me.
It's hard, but it's also one of the biggest honors too, that you're able to give that support to the family immediately. And yeah, it's just a challenge we kind of have to fight through, which is one of the reasons why I think the executive staff does push a little bit more into our mental wellness and our mental well-being. And that's some training that they've offered to field reps for that very reason. So
yeah, it's as hard as it is, we have a lot of support.
Yeah.
And I've really grown to, like, I just really appreciate that. I hope that one day I can emulate that, right? If I ever become a supervisor here for Tmpa. But the one thing that resonates in my mind is that we have to continue what we're doing, right? Yep. The mission of protecting those who serve, right? That's one of our slogans, right? We have to continue that, because we need to take care of the guys that are on the front lines. And I think that's what makes it such an awesome job, right? My wife she always tells me she's jealous of my job, because she says, and she'll say, can I go apply with you at Tmpa? I said, hell no. No, you can't. We're not going to work together. And
no.
We're the same. But she says, I'm jealous of your job, because I see how you help the other officers. And it really is. It's not, I was nervous about transitioning from a full-time sergeant at the sheriff's office to when I was a part-time, remember? Then I transitioned to a full-time. Yeah. I was nervous about that, because all I knew for half of my life, or more than half of my life, was being a cop. But just from what I saw as a part-timer, say, hey, I have a chance to be a part of something, and something that has just as much meaning as protecting and serving your community, right? Now I'm in the role of protecting those guys who are serving, the men and women, right? And it's hard to articulate and describe with words until you actually see it and experience it. But like you said, it's really hard to deliver that line of duty death benefit check, but we know that we're helping that family.
Yeah.
And that's a good feeling that I can be a part of something bigger than myself, right?
Yep.
That I can be a servant leader. And it's pretty cool, man. I remember the first days as a field rep just being nervous around the guys, right? Having met some of the characters, right? Because we can be some misfits sometimes.
Yeah, for sure.
And we can be pretty funny when we have a good sense of humor, and we also we know when to tone it down.
Yeah.
And be serious when we have to, right? So
That's right. Well, man, this is your first time being on the podcast, and so we would typically like to finish each podcast episode out with 3 rapid fire questions. You know what those are?
Yeah. Well, I don't. One of them's was a.
All right.
Okay.
Here we go.
Here we go.
What's your favorite cop car? What's your favorite line from a cop movie? Or what's your favorite drink of choice?
Favorite cop car, without a doubt, Crown Vic.
My man.
Crown Vic.
Yes, absolutely. It's the workhorse.
Got that sucker up to 140 one time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hell
I was
yeah.
scared, but I still got it up to it.
What's your favorite line from a cop movie or your favorite cop movie?
Favorite line? I don't know if I can say it, but it's from John McClane. Yippee-ki-yay.
Yeah, yippee-ki-yay, mother.
Yeah, that's
that one.
I watch those movies on a regular. I have all the movies, so I watch them on a regular basis. And then
Favorite drink of choice?
favorite drink of choice. It's gonna be between. Wait, are we talking about adult beverages?
Adult beverages.
Okay, favorite adult beverage. It's gonna be between an old fashioned and just the just a Jack and Coke.
Jack and Cokes are good.
Yeah, Jack and Coke got me through a lot of some rough times.
Yeah.
Which is not good either, because
No, it's not. It's not. But, sometimes they're warranted and sometimes they're needed. So
Yeah.
I can't thank you enough for coming up, being on the podcast, man. For those that don't know, man, JP's super busy. Newly grandpa, and you're not expecting any more, I don't think.
I actually have my gut instinct tells me there's gonna be more grandbabies
Oh, yeah.
in the future. But I tell my wife I feel old a lot of days, right?
Yeah.
I feel old just from injuries and stuff I've been through. But
Well, for the longest time, you've got 3. So for those that don't know, he's got 3 girls.
yeah,
Our other our other full-time field rep has got 3 boys, and so always the hidden agenda and joke was that the Ganeri and Rodriguez family were going to end up together, and we were going to have some soulmates. That doesn't look like it's on the horizon, but who knows? With the amount of grandbabies that the Ganeri family spitting out, you never know. You could have a Ganeri Rodriguez matchup.
I have a sign outside my house that says
No
like the
Ganeris allowed?
Ghostbusters. Yeah, like the Ghostbusters.
Yeah, no Ganeris
Yeah, no
allowed.
Canaries allowed.
That's
man.
funny.
Yeah.
Well, man, I can't thank you enough for coming up. It's been an honor. It's been an honor getting to know you the last couple of years since 2017,
Cheers.
since I came on. You do some phenomenal work in Southeast Texas, South Texas, and continue to do down there. So, man, our thoughts and prayers are with you all the time.
I appreciate it, man.
So, well, this about wraps this up. Again, we're with Field Rep JP Rodriguez, also City Council member with the City of Weslaco. And
Years.
you guys take care, stay safe. God bless you, and as always, may God bless Texas. We're out.